Welcome to the fourth and final workshop of our mentor program. I am so sad that this is our final workshop, but I'm so excited for you all to jump into this final workshop. We've got a lot to cover this evening. We've got an amazing guest speaker for you this evening. I think you're going to really enjoy this. Now, this workshop is all about how to make the most out of that first internship. How do you make the most of that first internship or first job? Maybe you're jumping into a full-time job, you're a senior, you're graduating. Maybe you're hopefully jumping into an internship. Even if you're not jumping into an internship, maybe you're working on a part-time job that you want to make the most out of for the summer. That's okay too. This workshop is all about how can you make the most out of that first opportunity over the summer so that you can really set yourself apart. By the way, if you have a part-time job and you don't have an internship, there are plenty of ways that you can go about setting yourself apart in that part-time job that could lead to internships down the road. Seriously, do not settle and do not sell yourself short for the network that you could create from any particular opportunity. I know that I could tell you that back in the day when I was a server and bartender, I met plenty of people that ultimately opened up doors for opportunities that I ended up taking advantage of later. You never know who you will meet, even in the jobs you think are not your main thing. It's understandable, but leverage it. Don't ever write any potential connection off. So, as you all know, my name's Garrett. I'm the founder of Ambition in Motion. This workshop's going to be about 50 minutes long. Please ask any questions you have. If you have any questions in the comments section, as you all know, I'm gonna ask 3 questions during the duration of this workshop. Your job is to answer them within 24 hours of this workshop going live. I don't necessarily know exactly what the questions are going to be. I always prompt them based on our guest speaker. Sometimes I'll slip in an intro question during this segment here. It just depends how I'm feeling for the day. So I'm so excited for you all to jump in, learn from our guest this evening. I'm so excited to learn your answers to the questions that we ask you, and I'm so excited to engage with you all. Now, I really want to set the expectations. As you all know, you're not going to get an internship handed to you on a silver platter. That's just not how this program works. Now, by the way, have students landed opportunities at Google, major investment banks, major engineering firms, major marketing firms? Absolutely, happens all the time. And have they done that as a result of meeting with their mentor, taking advantage of the things that they've learned through this program? Yeah, absolutely. But if you think this is going to get handed to you on a silver platter, I think you already know by now that's just not how this program works. You have to work for the things that you get. Now, this platform can be a springboard for you to get to where you want to be. Leverage this as an opportunity to really launch your early career path. Absolutely, yes, this is something that can really do make a huge impact on you getting to where you want to be. But this is not a handout. This is not something that is just given to you. This program could be critical to you really setting yourself apart compared to your peers. Take advantage of it. I really think that you're going to enjoy what we have to say in this workshop this evening. Now, I really want to talk about the intentionality of feelings, because here's the thing. At the end of the day, how you make someone feel in a given moment is going to really impact how they feel about you down the line. So I want you to just take a quick moment on a piece of paper or on your phone. I want you to identify, how do you want other people to feel about you? So when you're going into that first job, that first internship, that first part-time job, how do you want your boss? How do you want your colleagues? How do you want your peers? How do you want other people to feel about you? Write it in the comment section. Write it down on a piece of paper. I want to know, how do you want other people to feel about you? Because that intentionality is so key. It is so key, because here's the thing. If you don't write this down, if you don't set out an intention for how you want other people to feel about you, they are going to perceive you in any which way that you may feel on that given day. And that could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing. If you're having an off day and you're thinking to yourself like, oh man, I'm having a rough day, you can let that spew onto other people. It happens all the time. And people come up with excuses for it. You might say, hey, my dog died earlier today, or I just found out my grandma's got cancer, having a rough day. And don't get me wrong, there's not an excuse for having a rough day, but you've got to be able to realize that as a professional, you've got to put on multiple different hats to get yourself in the zone to make the most out of it. So no matter what's going on with your world, you can't let your personal world affect your business world. And if you do, it's going to potentially negatively impact the way that other people feel about you. But if you set an intention right now about how you want other people to feel about you, you're going to put yourself in a much better situation. If you think to yourself, I want people to think about me as dependable and reliable and someone that's always upbeat, confident, and excited when it comes to work. It doesn't matter what's going on with your outside world. Even if the worst thing could have possibly happened in your outside personal world, if you set yourself an intention right now that that's how you want other people to feel about you, when you come into work, you're going to straighten yourself up because you've already identified, I don't want people to feel sad, bad, or like that I'm a charity case because I've got other things going on in my outside world. You want other people to feel like you are a rock, that you are someone that they can go to, that you are someone that's always showing up professionally. Boom. You will get yourself into the mindset ready to be successful. Now that leads to the 3 keys that we cover in every workshop for success in this mentor program, which is strategy, story, and state. And as I just said, it doesn't matter what's going on in your outside world. It doesn't matter what the state of the world is. If you are a rock, if you are someone that physically comes into a state conducive for being successful every single time, you will be successful. I promise you that. So I want to do right now is I want to get you into a state conducive for being successful. I want you to stand up. And I want you to shake it loose. I want you to shimmy it out. I want you to let it go. I want you to scream at the top of your lungs. On the count of 3, scream 1, 2, 3. Yeah! Just let it out. Let it loose. Let it go. You're getting yourself pumping. You're getting blood flowing to your brain. You're releasing endorphins. You're getting yourself ready to be successful. The reason why that is so key is because no matter what is going on in your world, you can drive your emotions with your motions. Your motions drive your emotions, meaning that if you get out, you move, you do a power pose, you get crazy, you can get yourself in a state conducive for other people wanting to be around you. You can get yourself feeling good, even if you don't want to feel good. Even if you think to yourself, I just want to remorse for a little bit. I just want to be sad for a little bit. You can be sad on your own time, but when it comes to work time, you step your game up. And the way that you step your game up is you get your emotions and you turn them into positive emotions. I can tell you that right now. Even when you don't want to feel on your best self, your emotions can get yourself into an emotional state conducive for being successful, even if it's only for a temporary period of time. I promise you, your emotions, getting moving, getting running, getting going, getting just shaken out will get yourself successful. And that will be a huge catalyst for you being successful on the job, standing apart from other people. Because everyone else is going to wonder, like, man, how are you able to stay upbeat, positive, just like a go-to person every single time while other people are taking sick days or just having off days? And you can tell, everyone can tell. It's because you are making an intention to be that way before you come into work every single day. It's critical. Now, the next key is your story. What's the story you tell yourself? Now, that's a big point of the intentionality. What is the story you tell yourself for why you're going to be successful? If you're telling yourself a negative story like, hey, you know what, I don't deserve to be here, I'm not qualified, I'm just honestly, I don't even know why I'm in the room. If that's the story you tell yourself, that is the outcome that will be perceived by other people. But if you tell yourself a story, man, I can do this, I can make an impact, I can learn from these people, I can engage, I can be the energetic person who does what it takes, works the hardest to get to where I need to be. If you come in with that mentality, you can be successful. Now, the last key is your strategy. What are you going to do to make sure that you set yourself apart from your peers? Now, there's a few things that we talk about with our guest speaker, but there's a few things that I would love to discuss with you right now. The first one is what is focal is causal. This is popularized by the work of Dr. Robert Cialdini. Essentially, what it means is that whatever is seen is perceived, which means that it is all optics. By that, I mean, if your supervisor, if your boss, if your CEO sees you showing up early for work, working hard on projects, taking initiative, they will attribute the success of the entire intern team to you. But if they see you on your phone, on social media, doing something lazy, just doing things that are not, like spreading gossip at the water cooler, not working when you should be working, anything that could be perceived as negative, if they see that, they will perceive that just as likely as they do the hardworking stuff. So it is really critical that whatever people see about you, whoever you want to make sure that you impress, that they see the type of person that you want to portray, and that they do not see the type of person you do not want to portray. You will think to yourself, man, I wonder how does XYZ person get promoted over another person? I can tell you how. It's that they are seen doing good work while the other people are not seen doing good work. Make sure that you're seen doing good work. In fact, what I always find the most interesting about this research of Dr. Robert Cialdini is its extrapolation to other areas of life. specifically as, you know, I don't know if any of you all are holed up right now for coronavirus and sitting inside watching television, but what he's observed in his research is that when cameras, especially in police interrogations, are facing any particular person, whether that be the police officer or the suspect, when the camera is facing the person, one particular person, a jury is much more likely to attribute negative feelings towards that person if the camera is facing them. So if a camera is facing a suspect in an interrogation, the jury is much more likely to attribute guilt on the party of the suspect than they are to think that the cop is asking leading questions, trying to get an answer that may not actually exist. However, flip it around. When the camera is facing the police officer, not the suspect, the likelihood that the jury is going to think that the cop, the police officer, is asking leading questions, trying to get an answer that may not actually be essentially the guilt of the person who's under interrogation, it essentially increases substantially more. The point I'm trying to make is that when what people see is what they perceive. So at the end of the day, if God forbid you're ever in a police interrogation situation and you notice that the camera is rolling, at the best you want to make sure that the camera is side by side equally to you both, or not facing you and facing the police officer. It's crazy how much of an impact that has on how people perceive other people. But more importantly, as it pertains to the workplace, make sure that people see you doing good work and not see you doing bad work. It's not a tit for tat type of thing. One bad deed is about 10 good deeds worth. You have to really, really make sure that you're not seen doing anything bad, or you are going to be on the shit list of your supervisor. And that's not a place you want to be. So the next thing that I want to talk about is this theory called the next in line theory. Essentially what this says is that when somebody is talking or about to speak, their likelihood of retaining any information before or after their speech is very low. So if you know that your supervisor is about to give a presentation, or someone that you really look up to, maybe you are about to see a keynote speaker, you're thinking to yourself, I love this keynote speaker, I love what he or she has to say, I want to go up to him or her after their speech. Bad idea. Here's why. People, when they speak, are much more likely to think about what they just said if they just finished giving a speech, or what they're about to say if they're about to give a speech. Their likelihood of retaining any new information is very minimal. So therefore, you need to give the person you're trying to make a positive impression to a leeway period before you bring up new information to them, because that will increase the likelihood that your message is actually going to resonate in their mind. But if you come up to them right before a speech or right after a speech that they just gave or are about to give, their likelihood of remembering what you said, very low. So just something to keep in mind. This also applies to a boss who's giving a speech, any colleague that's giving a speech, anybody who's about to speak publicly for anything. Make sure you don't talk to them immediately before or afterwards, because they're not going to remember what you said. So the last thing that I want to touch on is this concept called matching and mirroring. This is a great key for building rapport in the workplace, especially for someone who's got negative body language. So I think we've touched on this before in the past, but you should not have your arms crossed when you're at the workplace. It conveys that you're closed off and that you're not open to learning new information. But there's a lot of people that have bad body language in the workplace. There's going to be a lot of people that will cross their arms to you. Can you cross back? The answer is yes. And I know this might sound crazy, but people feel a subconscious connection to others that they are similar to. And this can be in your mannerisms and your speed of speech. Not your dialect of speech, but your speed of speech. So if somebody has a very thick Southern accent and you try to emulate that Southern accent, but you don't actually have a Southern accent, they're going to sniff that out immediately. It's going to be perceived as inauthentic. But if someone's talking really quickly and you're saying, I'm going to work on that, boss, I'm going to make sure I get that done, I'm going to work on it right away, they're going to think to themselves like, man, here's a sense of urgency, someone who's really with it. That's awesome. But instead, if you respond by saying, yeah, boss, I will get to it, and I will make sure that I get those assignments complete, they're going to be thinking to themselves, what the heck is wrong with this kid? Like, what, does he not like get it? The sense of urgency? It's crazy how your speed of speech is actually perceived so similar together. So if you notice that someone talks really quickly or really slowly, following their speed of speech, matching and mirroring their speed of speech can actually help you build rapport with them. The other key is other body language. So like I said, crossing your arms. If someone's playing with their chin, you can play with your chin. Don't try to be overly obvious about it, but you can do it subtly. So if someone's playing with their ear, you can play with your ear. And I know it may sound crazy, but you can try this with a friend who's never heard this before. Go up to them, see if they've got any mannerisms. Maybe they're using their hands like this a lot. Emulate those hand gestures, and then all of a sudden introduce a new gesture. All of a sudden, maybe start playing with your nose. It could be any gesture, honestly. Start playing with your nose. Do it. First, emulate their hand gestures for about 5 minutes. Then introduce a new gesture. Watch what happens. They're going to start playing with their nose. They're going to start emulating the new gesture that you have now introduced. It's crazy. It's fascinating how it works, but it builds rapport between other people in the work environment. I think those are some really critical tips for you to know. The last thing that I want to leave you with is the 30 and 90-day rule. The 30-day rule is for an internship. When you first get into an internship, this is, by the way, this was, by the way, a Fortune 500 CEO taught me this tip, and that was when you first go into an internship, meet with your supervisor and ask him or her the question, what did the best intern you ever have do to set themselves apart? On the very first day, ask that question. They're going to tell you exactly what they want you to do to set yourself apart. For the next 30 days, go ahead and do it. Don't complain. Don't ask questions. Don't share any professional goals you've got for yourself. Just go ahead, put your head down, work hard. After 30 days, you have built credibility with this person. You can then say, hey, boss, would you be open to having a conversation? I would love to share with you some of my professional goals. Boom. That's where you share some of your professional goals. That's where you say, hey, I'm interested in connecting with people in these areas or these types of fields or these types of industries. And because you've earned credibility, they will help you get there. Why? Because you've earned that credibility. But if on day one you ask for that and you've earned no credibility, they're not going to do it. Or if they do, they're going to only do it on a light version. You're not going to get the full force of how they could possibly help connect you. That is something that's really critical. 90-day rule is the exact same thing, but for a full-time job, you get a little bit longer to really build that credibility with your supervisor and your employer. So those are key tips. The last thing I want to just really mention is really starting to help you get into a routine. I know that the best way to learn anything is to actually teach it. So what I want you to do is I want you to find somebody. This could be a friend, it could be a peer, it could be a classmate, it could be anybody. Teach them something that you learned in this program. Teach them anything you learned in this program. We know that students who tell at least, we know that students who tell at least 20 people something that they learned in this program, that their likelihood of landing the job, the internship, getting to a graduate degree increases exponentially. We know that the more people a student tells, the more likely they're able to do that. What we've identified as 20 is that magic number. And this doesn't necessarily have to be you teaching them a full seminar of anything we taught. It could be literally you bringing up casually in conversation, like, hey, I learned about this thing called matching and mirroring. It's really fascinating. Boom, that's it. That's one person. Or multiple people if you're in a group. But what we've learned is that the more people you tell, the more likely you are actually going to retain this information, the more likely you are going to actually apply it into your professional life, and the more likely you are actually to achieve the goals you have set for yourself professionally. It's crazy how it works. It's a network effect. It really does make an impact. So I want to challenge you that after this workshop, you go out, you identify a friend, you teach them something you learned in this program, and its likelihood of sticking increases exponentially. I really want to challenge you to do that. This is our final workshop. I'm really excited for what you are able to accomplish over the summer. I would really encourage you to be in the program next semester. You're going to get a new mentor. We're going to have new speakers. We're going to talk about new content. I think you're going to really enjoy it and really springboard your career into another level. I think you're going to really enjoy that. Thank you all for being here. Have a wonderful rest of this workshop. I look forward to seeing you all in the next part. Welcome to our workshop this evening. I'm so excited to jump into how we can make the most out of our first job or internship. We've got an incredible guest with us this evening. We've got Kathryn Ness. Kathryn is a partner at Go Strategies and has been a marketing executive for over 20 years. Kathryn, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Garrett. I'm really excited. Yeah, the 20 years, I can't believe it's happened already. This is going to happen to all of you as well. You're going to blink and all of a sudden you've got 20 years under your belt and like, wait, why am I the oldest person in the room? It'll happen. Trust me.
Well, I think that's a really good point and dovetails right into the first question I have is how can a student properly set their expectations for that first job or internship? The reason why it's relevant to that is because, as you mentioned, you think you're coming in, you're still the newbie, and then all of a sudden 20 years goes by and you're like, where the heck did the time go? So how can somebody properly set their expectations for that first job or internship?
That's a really good thing to map out at the beginning. Your first job, you're setting your expectations for your career, what are you doing with this internship? So right now, as you just jump into your job, really have an idea where you want to go with goals of like 1 year, 3 year, 5 years. Goal setting is really important as well, especially with careers. And you've heard this before, have that goal, but also step into that position with the expectations of not just about you, not just as much as you getting, it's as much as you can give as well. So think about the other side of that equation of you're getting a paycheck, great, but you're also giving a lot to them as well. And make it more than just that paycheck. That's the important part. And properly set yourself up with those expectations of knowing what you want to achieve, knowing where you have some metrics of like, okay, this week I'm going to do those little tactical parts of achieving this goal, and have those set up for yourself as well. I'm a big planner where I put information into my planner. As a matter of fact, it's sitting right here next to me, but it's how do you achieve those goals, and they just don't happen by accident. That's how you graduated, or you're going to be graduating, as you went through 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 years of school, but you took certain classes and you built on that. The same thing with your career is really important, and how you set yourself up for those. But have a pretty good definition of what you want to achieve yourself, but also don't be afraid to adapt and kind of adjust those boundaries too. And adaptability is a really strong strength for you to have in any position as well. Also, be curious, because right now you know a whole bunch of information, you know a whole bunch of stuff, but there's a lot more to be learned. So be curious and ask those questions on what else is entailed, not with just with your job, but how does this impact the bigger sphere of things, especially for you, the engineering folks. Look at the big picture of how this is going to happen, or how this is going to impact the rest of the world that's out there. You have a great opportunity to really make a difference in the way that our built environment works.
I love that. There's so many key points that you just brought in there that I want to unpack. So first, you brought up goal setting, 1 year, 3 year, and 5 year goals. I'd love to ask the students in the audience right now, what is your 1 year, 3 year, and 5 year goal? Post it in the comments section. I love to learn about it. I love to have everybody else share and learn about each other's 1 year, 3 year, and 5 year goals. I think goals are so critical. I think it helps you create a roadmap for where you like to be, and it allows you to assess, am I on track? I think I see so often people get in their jobs or their careers, and sometimes, unfortunately, you hear things like, oh, I'm in a rut, or I'm really frustrated, or things are not going the way I want them to go. And the question you have to ask yourself is, well, how did you know if you were on the right track of where you wanted things to go versus where you are actually now? Like, typically, people base this off of what other people are doing, what they maybe see their friends doing, or what they see their colleagues doing, or what they've got some external influences that influence what they think they deserve versus where they're at, and it creates some frustration and distaste for that role. And so you talked about that notion of what am I giving, or what am I getting, but also what am I giving in terms of my time and in terms of garnering my experiences, and is that aligned with my 1 year, 3 year, 5 year goals? And I think that can really help set somebody in alignment of whether or not they're on the right path. Would you agree?
Absolutely. That is, you have those goals out there, and that's kind of, you have those influencers. You see somebody else doing something, it's like, oh, that's bright and shiny, that squirrel moment, as I like to call it, because you get distracted. But it's okay to vary a little bit. You don't realize that you want to be a NASCAR driver until you hear somebody else do it, but really, is that going to help you achieve your 3 year goal? So maybe go out and take a lesson how to be a fast NASCAR driver, but it's really not going to impact where your goal, your 3 year or 5 year goal is. That's great. Could help you with that achievement. But don't be distracted by those other things that are out there unless it's really going to fit into your value and your core being of who you are. The other part of that is also getting a mentor, as a matter of fact, is very important for you to set. And I know this is what you guys are doing right here, but once you get into your job, once you get into, an internship, find somebody there that is going to help you navigate through the ins and outs of that organization you're within. And also look outside the department that you're in. So if you are in the engineering department or you're in the business, talk to your IT folks, talk to talk to the other departments as well, and because you're going to learn a lot more about that, and it will help you achieve and provide better value to the firm, and also provide you better information, again filling in that hole of what I think I know and going into what I know and really knowing what what else is out there.
I love that, Kathryn. I think that makes a ton of sense. I mean, obviously, one, I'm a big advocate of getting a mentor. I think that makes a ton of sense. But there was one thing that really stuck out about what you just said that I think totally resonates with me. It very much falls along the lines of Will Smith has this quote of any focus on your plan B is a distraction from your plan A. But more or less, it's this idea that sometimes I hear students say is, well, I want to diversify my experience. I want to get some experiences here, and I want to get some experiences there, and I want to get some experiences here. I met a young man who he was trying to dual major in both biology so then he could be pre-med while at the same time pursuing investment banking. It's like, both are incredible careers, both are incredible opportunities, but if you are going to try to be both a doctor and an investment banker at the exact same time, my friend, you are going to burn yourself out. So you might as well sink all of your teeth into one of those baskets and just eventually figure out if you like it. Because ultimately, if you sink halfway, if you're mediocre in all these different areas, eventually what's going to happen is you're going to get burnt out, one, and two, you're not going to be particularly great at any one of those areas. Whereas if you get really excellent at one area, you may end up realizing, you know what, I don't know if being a doctor is the right fit for me. And if that's the case, you can switch and go full force into something else. But if you only get halfway into doctoring and halfway into investment banking, you're not necessarily putting yourself in the best position to succeed because you're not fully experiencing either one of them.
You're only committing part of you to any of those experiences and learning. So that's exactly, and anytime you can quote Will Smith, awesome. I love it. It is about focusing and giving yourself some sideboards so you know how to continue moving forward. And also, and I did say a little bit earlier, put those metrics in there too, so you know that you are advancing, you know that you have hit a milestone. And one thing that's really, really important, and I have to challenge myself on this, is celebrating when you do hit those milestones as well, because it's really important to recognize those achievements. They can be minimal, they can be small, it can be as easy as like, I'm going to go and download a new song, or pay for that new song, or I'm going to buy a new pair of tennis shoes or new pair of running shoes. If you meet one of your metrics that has created that path forward for you and keep you focused on achieving those goals, is really important as well, especially with the new career that you have, that expectations.
I love that. I think that makes so much sense. And you're right. I mean, you and I know this from so for the students that don't realize this. So Kathryn's also an executive in our executive mentor program. So she's paired with another leader for mentorship as well. And one of the things we talk about is celebrating the wins. And I know most of these students in our program are very achievement oriented. They've got very high GPAs. They work very hard on their academics. And so it can be easy to overlook the wins. It can be easy to feel like getting that 4.0 is just like any day, any walk in the park, just, it's something to be expected. But if we do not take the time to celebrate our wins, we will get burnt out. And that is something that's very critical to assess. And I think that leads directly into my next question, which we've kind of already answered, but I love if there's any additional points. How can we minimize surprises in that first job or internship at work?
Minimizing surprises, I think you're going to have surprises. Be aware of that. You're going to have things like, oh, I didn't realize that. It's how do you receive and react to those surprises that is going to be important for you to recognize. It's like, especially if you have a point where someone's giving you a task or something you don't know, how do you turn around and be, I'm going to say vulnerable, because sometimes you don't know it, or you've studied it in school, it was not one of your strengths, which again, having high achievers in this group, which is fantastic, but you also want to be able to know everything. But how do you react to something that could be a surprise to you is really important. And then asking and being curious. It's like, okay, so this is what I have, and this is what I'm hearing you say. Ask them a little bit deeper. It's like, I'm curious on what your expectations are on the other side of this. How do you want me to get this taken care of? And then come up with some collaborative ways to work through those surprises as well. I mean, surprises at work are going to happen. It's like, oh, by the way, we wanted this done yesterday. Well, realistically, that's not going to happen. So what are your expectations for me to get it done, by Friday? And if you need to get it done by Friday, that's great. Maybe you need to bring somebody else in as well. But come in with solutions versus the, oh my gosh, I can't get this done. Why are you giving me this? This is something that is not possible. It's possible. You just have to think outside the box on the way that you're going to, one, react to it, and two, find those solutions and then get it done. Things can get done in quite an amazing way. So I hope that gives you some ideas.
I think that was a really great response. I think that makes a ton of sense. I love the idea of being constantly curious, because as students, what made us successful, what got us here, is not necessarily going to get us there. By that I just mean what made us successful as a student is not necessarily what's going to make us successful as a professional. And so a lot of times I see this quite often with recent graduates is they'll get into that first job and they'll face that first bit of stress. And sometimes you'll see some people, some recent graduates say, you know what, this isn't for me. This is way too stressful. I'm out. And then they get to the next role and they're like, wait, this was even more stressful than the previous job. Yeah. What the heck is going on here? Mm-hmm. And then you've got other people where they just kind of put up with it. And it's actually a really stressful situation for the work. And they just keep pushing through it because they're thinking to themselves, well, I don't want to be that young person who says that they're getting stressed out by every little thing. And so I'm going to keep pushing and working through it. When in reality, it is an actual really stressful situation. And so this notion of being constantly curious, I'm interpreting that to essentially mean ask people questions. Ask people around the industry questions of, is this normal? Is this something to be expected from my work? Is this something that I should be normally used to handling? And as you get multiple data points, as you have multiple interviews and multiple pieces of feedback, you can assess for yourself, like, you know what? Yeah, this is, I know I was stressed at first, but you know what? This is a reasonable amount of work to expect for this type of role. But if you talk to somebody else and multiple people and say, hey, you're doing things that I've never been asked to do ever. And I mean, kudos to you for working that hard, but that's potentially the moment where you can stand up for yourself and acknowledge, you know what? Maybe either this company isn't the right fit, or this type of work isn't the right fit, or a conversation needs to be had with my supervisor, because sometimes people will just ask you to do things until they get to the point where you tell them no. What are your thoughts on that, Kathryn?
You said two things that were really important. Feedback is so important. First of all, it helps you with the metrics of knowing, how am I doing? Take away that assumption and really ask for that feedback. You're going to have to be vulnerable. And the other thing is, it is okay to have a group outside to vent to, but just realize that venting without some sort of solution is just a whole bunch of empty words. So usually go into maybe a peer group, or somebody that you have a connection with in this group, as a matter of fact, and just say, hey, is this normal? It's that curiosity side of it too. It's like, is this normal? Is this something that, how are some other ways that I can handle this? Or even reflect on, what were my thoughts and feelings at that moment in time? Very important. But I want to go back to that mentoring internally, ask for that feedback, your supervisor, but externally too. So you do have an avenue to find out what is a commonplace, especially with the type of work. And sometimes your supervisor may assume you know something. And again, eliminating those assumptions by setting the expectations, having that conversation right up front. It's okay to ask those questions. If you don't ask those questions, your supervisor will assume, one, you understand it, and two, you're competent and have the skills to complete that task. But if you need some guidance, that's great. I have to say, working with engineers and architects for the past 20 years, I have learned they love to talk about the work that they do. They love to really share the information. So don't be afraid to talk a little bit how they came up with some solutions, the collaboration part of it too. It eliminates that assumption that you do understand everything 100%. You're new to the job. don't feel like you have to know everything. You might know more than them, but that's not a good a good way to bring it into the job place either. So, yeah.
Yeah, and if you don't ask, there can be consequences. I can share an example. I think the best example is of acronyms and just shortened lingo that other people may not know. I'm not a big fan of acronyms, and I'm not a big fan of shortened lingo for the purpose of it ostracizes people. If like you've got no idea what NLQ or TPS or SKG means, like you might feel uncomfortable asking because you think it's a stupid question, but in reality, it's not. An example of this, and this is back in the day, but at one point in time in my life, I was a server at a popular brunch restaurant. And the culture at the restaurant was kind of like, you don't ask questions for clarity. It was like, go and do this thing, and you just kind of did it. And so my job this one morning was filling up the syrup containers. Now, nobody had explained or showed me how to fill up the syrup containers, and I was at a younger point in my life where I didn't feel comfortable asking questions for clarity or anything like that. So they were like, just fill up the syrup containers, like just figure it out, Garrett. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I just grabbed the syrup bottles that I could find, which I noticed on the bottle it said sugar-free syrup, and I was like, I guess this is a syrup we're using. I've got no idea, and I didn't feel comfortable asking for clarity. So I filled up all of these syrup containers with sugar-free syrup. And they were like, have you been filling up these containers with sugar-free syrup? Oh, it was so embarrassing. And I was like, yes. And I filled up like 30 like containers of it. And it was the wrong thing. There was like big jugs of syrup in like a back corner, but no one had ever showed me, and I didn't feel comfortable being asked. And I wanted to step up because I wanted to show that I could figure it out. And it totally smacked me right in the face. So the moral of the story is when there is something you don't necessarily know, it's okay to ask. You can ask for clarity, but don't wait until the moment you've been there for so long that you don't feel, and really there's no moment that you've been there for so long that if you need clarity on something, you can always ask for it, because the worst is to do the thing you're not supposed to do and then have everybody be like, what the heck are you doing? Because then it potentially could bite you in the butt.
Well, I'm so glad you gave that example. Two things. One, that you didn't continue in food service because you're much better at this right here. But the other thing is, it's those assumptions. I have great examples too, because you can't assume everybody knows what that TLA is, a 3-letter acronym. You cannot assume that. And yeah, don't be afraid to ask that, because if you ask that question, you probably are not the only one that is thinking that as well. That is so important to realize that, ask that question you think is stupid. It's not stupid. Someone else is thinking it too and asking that same question. So it helps out, and you provide value. And it helps the person trying to teach you or present. It's like, oh, I forgot that is just a common language within our group, that's important. Yeah, I had one of those too. Just never assume. What's LTOP? I was a food server as well. It's like, oh, lettuce, LTOP, lettuce, tomato, onions, and pickle on a hamburger. What's LTOP? I have no idea. So anyway, yeah, that's why we're not in food service anymore. Thank goodness.
Yeah. So to transition, I love to ask this question about networking at work. I think so often I see a lot of students, they'll get that first job or they get that first internship, and they'll think like, okay, cool, I'm just going to only really interact with my people, and I'm not going to really shake any feathers or ruffle anybody or break the status quo. And so I'm not going to reach out to anybody else at work. And I find that to be the silliest thing, because so often, and this isn't necessarily always the case, this is just one example, but oftentimes I'll see people where they say something along the lines of, I just feel like I've hit the ceiling. Like the person above me, they're not going anywhere for years. I'm at the highest level I could possibly be at within my role. And so I'm probably just going to leave and go to a different company. Although the company culture is great, I love the people I'm working with. And the question naturally is, well, have you chatted with other people outside of your department about what their work is like, and see if potentially you could fill in a role, make a diagonal move or a horizontal shift with your work? And I am stunned at how few people have actually done that. They haven't put themselves out there. So that's one example, but I'd love to learn, what are some other reasons why it's important to network while at work and while on the job?
Networking on the job, so important too. So a couple of things that I want to bring up on that, because networking, not just on the professional side of things, but also on the companion, the colleague side of things are important too. So on the professional side of things, by networking throughout the organization on varying levels and varying departments is just as important, because it's going to teach you more about the operations on how this all works. So you are responsible for billable, you need to get your project done, you got to meet that deliverable, but do you understand how the accounting, that if you don't make the right entry into your timesheet, that can impact the AR. And what is the AR? It's how you get paid and what are those fringe overhead. So that's a lot of information to get information on, but if you understand some of the processes and procedures, that's important as well. Also, if you talk to somebody in HR, you understand, that here's how you can help recruit and help create a better culture. Same thing with the marketing and business development, because then you realize that when you're out delivering that job and you're out talking to the client, you're actually listening for maybe the next project coming up, or you're listening to other problems that are out there. So it's how do you network beyond what you're doing your desk in a professional sense. It will help you a couple of different things, and back to the curiosity, but it will also help you understand how the whole function of the business is, and also provide, on the other side, they're looking at you. If you're curious and you ask these questions, you will be seen as someone that really is interested in growing, not just in engineering or business degree, but you're also going to be growing to help the business provide value to their clients, because that's what it's all about. And then checking out, if you're, say you're in the structural side of things, or if you're in the civil side of things, asking a little deeper questions about how these all work together. It's going to let you be a better designer, a better architect, a better engineer, because you're going to understand how all of these pieces come together. And it will also help you understand and build relationships with people that, maybe you make a lateral move. Maybe this department isn't working out. This is not what you thought it was going to be. It's going to help you understand how you can move over a little bit better. And then on the personal side of things, building relationships with your colleagues creates an amazing culture, not just for you, but for everybody else too, because you have teamwork. You understand personalities, their personality styles, and how do you communicate with each other. I mean, if someone is uber outgoing, they might be obnoxious. Fine, don't have to hang out with them. But if you find people that I'm uber obnoxious because I'm outgoing, but also realize that you're the newbie at this point in time coming in. 5 months, maybe 5 days down the road, I mean, that soon, you could be somebody that's there, and you're going to have an opportunity to bring somebody else in that is the new person, and you're going to have an opportunity to be that the buddy system in there too. And it's going to create a better culture. Retention, you guys are going to be seen, they're going to be wanted to be there because you have a good sense of camaraderie and you can work collaboratively. I can always say that word. So I think networking in your job is so important, and it really does help you alleviate the stress. Now you still got to meet your deliverables and your time frames and all of that too. That's just part of the job. But having a little fun at work, going to lunch with friends, or even going to beers after work when we can finally do it, really important. Networking on that level too.
So what you're saying is something that I think is a little bit astonishing and probably surprising to a lot of students, and I'm going to maybe put it in different words. I think so often as professionals and young people, we think to ourselves, well, it's up to the company to build the culture. Like, they're providing me with the culture, I'm just entering in it. And if I'm hearing you right, what you're saying is that we build the culture for ourselves. If we choose to network at work, if we choose to build these connections, if we choose to have these conversations, maybe going out and grabbing drinks or hanging out with some of our colleagues, that's on us to build the culture, and it benefits us by helping build the culture. Is that what you're saying?
That is exactly what I'm saying, Garrett. It is so important. The culture is set at the top. The vision and, why do we do things, that is set at the top. And again, you're looking at these companies that you want to work with, work for, depends on what, preposition you want to use there. But setting the culture does come from you. If you're going to come in, put your head down, do your work, that's great. You're a segmenter. This is what your work culture is work, and that's all you're going to do. But you got to look a little bit bigger and above that, because if that's what you want to do, is come in and just do that work, that's great. You can work anywhere, and you're going to fulfill the job, you're going to get a paycheck. But if you want to work someplace that's dynamic, it is up to you to create that culture. It is up to you to be accepting into that culture and really doing your research ahead of time on what is that company like, what is that culture like. There's a lot of softwares out there, from Glassdoor to Indeed and all that too. You can read that stuff, but it also helps to talk to people that you have gone to school with that maybe knows a little bit about this company. And if you find out the culture is not what you want it to be, move on. You have a lot of opportunities out there too, or at least get a couple of months under your belt. And I'm not an advocate for bouncing around, because that does not look good on a resume, but try it out and see what it looks like. Maybe, one person's bad experience is someone else's awesome experience. And because people change, it's awesome.
Yeah, I love that. I think that makes a lot of sense. I'd love to ask the students who are watching this right now, what is something you would like to start intentionally doing to help you build the culture for your next work opportunity? So whether you're entering your first job or your first internship over the summer or in the fall, what is something you would like to begin doing? What would you like to do when you get into that first job or internship to really help improve the culture for yourself? So then you're starting to do something. Post in the comment section. I'd love to learn about it. Just kind of setting that intention at the beginning, as opposed to kind of like letting the culture come to you and then assessing it from there. What can you do, and what can you set an intention of right now, so then when you get into that first job or internship, you already have a plan for how you're going to build and grow the culture. Post in the comment section. I'd love to learn about it. This is a question I've got for you, Kathryn, and it's about failure. It's about really how we view failure and what that means. I guess what I'd be curious to know is, what is your advice for students that are afraid to fail?
My advice is pretty simple. Do not be afraid to fail, because failure is not failure. Failure is actually a lesson to be learned. And if you go in and think you're going to, if you fail, that's it, you're over, you're doomed. No, nobody's died from a fail. Well, no, we can't say that. So failing is just not meeting your expectations or someone else's expectations. So failing is an opportunity to actually do better and figure out how to make it really work. And if you take that attitude on failure, you're going to realize that moving forward inch by inch is important. And in not being afraid to fail also gives you an opportunity to try things that are going to be a little bit different. I think that's the best part about not being afraid to fail, is you have an amazing amount of opportunity of trying, not succeeding, big word there, trying again, doing better, maybe not exactly where you want it to be, and then trying again. It is all about falling down, picking yourself up, brushing yourself off, trying it again. You might fall down again, but you're going to continue on. And every time that you pick yourself up, you have lessons that you have learned on how not to do something. And that's applicable. You can take those on to other lessons as well, where you apply what you learned from those non-successes over to other situations as well. Do not be afraid to fail. It's not a failure. It's just not achieving that goal that you had in mind at that point in time. And maybe sometimes you have a different, you failed at something, but another outcome could have come out of that you didn't even realize, an accidental success. Look at those too. Is there something else that you can pull forward with that?
I love that. I want to kind of clarify this one thing, because we talked about this at the beginning of this workshop, and now, we touched on something else now. And I want to confirm that they're not opposing sides. So earlier in this workshop, we talked about this idea of focus and, not doing a bunch of different things. But now one thing that I'm hearing you say is we should be, within our focus, diversifying our experiences. So to clarify, this isn't about, both being a doctor and being an investment banker. Those are very different, on opposite ends of the earth kind of experiences that you might potentially pursue. But let's say you end up pursuing a career in mechanical engineering. There's a lot of things that you can do within mechanical engineering. What I'm hearing you say is try a lot of them, because ultimately some of them may not work. And what is a failure? A failure is the opportunity to learn. A failure is putting yourself out there to get out of your comfort zone, because with comfort, we cannot grow. Without comfort, we can. So when we get out of our comfort zone, we can put ourselves in the position to grow and learn and determine what we like better. Yeah. The analogy I like to use with this is with cooking. So I never cook the same thing twice. My fiance, she is so frustrated by that. She's like, Garrett, you crushed it on cooking this fish. Just cook it the exact same way this next time. And I say, no, well, why would I do that? If I could possibly cook something better the next time, I might as well try something slightly different, because it could make the dish even better. The point is this, is if you can constantly challenge yourself to try new things and get new experiences, you will never be settling for something that might eventually frustrate you. What are your thoughts on that, Kathryn?
Yes, you hit it right on your head. Having the duality of learning, but still within your focus, or trying different successes within your focus is really important. It's not that you need to go out and be a successful stockbroker and a doctor. Really, as an engineer or an architect or a business person, you're really looking at how do you move those successes forward and still staying within your focus. I think that's important. I love the analogy of that cooking too. Some people are recipe followers and some people are more of those are guidelines. And I am definitely a guideline person because of those. Well, let's try, instead of using, this spice, we're going to use curry. Instead of using, olives, I'm going to try pepperoncinis and see how that works as well. And it is within the focus that you have, because if you try within that focus, that's great. And I'm going to say that sometimes you do need to realize if you're not meeting those metrics that you had set up there to meet those 1, 3, and 5 year goals, it's okay to jump, and then maybe you do want to be a doctor, or you do want to, but how do you take those successes out of all of that focus that you just had and move those over to where else you want to be? I've had 2 careers in my life. I've actually been in marketing and business development for 20 years, but before that, I was actually working in healthcare. I was doing claims administration, and I stopped that. Why? Because I could see that my career path was not going anywhere. I took a leap of faith and I took a job that I had no idea what was going on. I asked these questions that were really huge and big of like, so what does that mean? And it started out with an engineering firm that did groundwater hydrogeology. I can geek out on, even though I'm not an engineer, I love that stuff. I'm reading books about all kinds of water, about groundwater, but it's because I'm curious, and I took a lot of what I learned through the claims administration and I applied these to client focus. I applied the same skills to how do I make things better and bigger? How do I ask these questions? So again, it's okay once you're starting out, really stay focused, give it all you have. That's the thing, be authentic to yourself and give it all that you have and move forward. So that duality of like, how do you succeed, or how do you try these different techniques, we'll call them, or different things to try and not fail, but still learn, and then move them over to how do you make sure that you're continuing on with your plan within that focus as well. I hope that answered the question there, because it's a duality of like, well, what do we do? Think of and, not or. Mm-hmm.
I think you're spot on with that. I think that's really cool. I'd love to ask the students, I know this is going to be kind of an intense question to ask, but I'd love to ask everybody who's watching this, post in the comment section, when is a time that you failed? What did you learn from that? I know that's kind of an intense question to put out there, but I'd be really curious. When have you failed? What did you learn about it? Everybody's failed. I've shared a failure already during this workshop. It's okay to acknowledge a time that you failed. What did you learn from that experience? Post in the comment section. I'd love to learn about it. Last question I have for you, Kathryn, is, and it's kind of dovetailing into a slightly relevant but slightly different area, is it important to impress your boss? How does that kind of hold weight within the whole grand scheme of things with our career path and where we like to take our careers?
Wow, of course we want to impress our boss. We're going to go get him coffee. No, we're not. We are going to impress our boss because you're providing value, and you're also providing your boss with exactly what they need from you at that point in time, but then you're also going to be And I want to use your authentic self again, because if you are a curious person, and it sounds like all of you are guys, gals, whatever, because you are in this ambition in motion program right here because you're curious, you want to make things a little bit better. But impressing your boss is important, and I think that's again that communication of, don't assume that by doing something that you think is going to impress them they might get irritated. Like, just, do you have to come into my office every 3 seconds and ask me a question? That could irritate them and not impress the boss. But ask them right up front, what are their expectations? And then meet those expectations, and that will impress them. What will also impress them is the value that you provide them and bring into the job. If you don't know a question, Google it, or, find out what's going on. Come in with multiple solutions and ask the boss, okay, this is what I've learned. I've done some research. I understand that this is what could happen, but this is where I need your guidance. And I think your boss would be really impressed that you've gone above and beyond. You have also come in with solutions, and you're also open to their guidance as well. Those are very important things. But get to know your boss first. Get to know how they are going to be communicated with. What is their style? I think that, and that opens up a whole bunch of other questions too. What is the style? So that's for another conversation.
That's a great point. And the research, by the way, backs up a lot of what you're saying. Dr. Robert Cialdini, he's got this book called Persuasion, and in it, he talks about this idea that what is focal is causal. And by that, all I mean is what somebody sees, they perceive. So if they see you doing the work, asking the questions, showing up early, staying late, doing the tasks that need to get done, if they see you with their eyes doing this, they're going to perceive that you're working really hard and that you're doing the due diligence. It does not serve you to be a wallflower. It does not serve you to do your work, but mysteriously submit it under anonymous. Because at the end of the day, you might think oh, I'm being a team player. No one needs to acknowledge me. No one's going to give you the credit, and you deserve the credit. If you worked hard, people want to see it. There's only one way you're going to get the credit, is that's from being observed doing good tasks and good things. Vice versa, if people see you on Facebook, even if you're working your butt off, working extra hours every single day, the one time your CEO walks in or your manager walks in and they see you on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook or whatever, that's going to taint their perspective of you. It's going to feel like, do I not have enough work for you? It's just, at the end of the day, what people see, they perceive. And so the point you made about asking questions, being diligent, and just really being curious makes you so much more, not only attractive, but so much more promotable, because people can see that you're really taking an interest in the work and that you're working hard.
Yeah, and that's very funny you should say that. One instant, it's going to happen. I don't care how, you're going to have that one time, all of a sudden you're on your phone. It's like, oh, there's your boss. That is not an impress. Even though you may be doing something that is work related, they don't know. And of course, the human brain will make up the worst stories when they don't have all the information. It's crazy how that happens. The other thing that would help with building some sort of impression with your boss is working collaboratively. And especially in the environment that we have today, if you can work to, we all have to stand out. We all need to make sure we get our due of the work that we've done as well. But also, if you've worked in a collaborative sort of situation, they don't realize that you've already had 2 other people help you with this solution. Make sure you give them credit as well. It's okay to share that. It's like, yeah, it was a great team effort where John over here helped out, and then we also had Ibram over here that was able to provide this information. That really goes a long way of being a team player and not being the only one that's going to be in the spotlight and I have to have all the glory. Really important as well.
Great point. I think that's a token from radical accountability. Mm-hmm. Give credit to everybody else, but when it comes to blame, take it on your own, because that just shows leadership. It shows maturity. Yep. And it shows that you are someone who's going to rectify situations. The moment you start playing the blame game or excuses or anything like that, it's the moment you lose credibility with other people. Because more often than not, people aren't mad that the action happened. What they're more frustrated at is how people handle how the action happened. And if you can diffuse it with radical accountability, people are going to really appreciate that and give you a lot of credit for it. So Kathryn, this has been awesome. This was a very insightful workshop for our students. I think the students really enjoyed learning this. The final question I have for you is, how can our students connect with you? I know a lot of our students are on LinkedIn. Is it all right that they reach out to you on LinkedIn? Are there other ways that they can connect with you and your work?
Absolutely. I would love to hear, and if anybody wants to have a conversation, I also have my son just graduated with his master's from University of New Mexico, and he's a mechanical engineer, so I can relate, besides working, in 20 years, so I totally get it. Absolutely. So my email address is Kathryn, Kathryn, at go-strategies.com. I'm on LinkedIn. My last name is Ness, N-E-S-S, Kathryn Ness. It's pretty simple. Please reach out. Send me a little note in there. Say, hey, I was on Ambition in Motion. I got to see that. I would love to hear some feedback. I would love to hear some of the comments about the questions that Garrett has asked you to put in the chat. So hopefully he'll share those with me too. And then anything else, just some career advice as well too. And I think having a healthy workplace is so important, and having the new fresh blood in there ready to go. And the future leaders, you're it. I appreciate you guys taking care of everything for us. So yeah.
You're amazing, Kathryn. Thank you so much for
you.
being here. Students, thank you all for being here. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. See everybody.
Bye.